What's good, family? Obviously, my doggy. Now, to today's topic, we got some more breaking news right now regarding the shillian shite situation with Tyson Fury. Now, boxing scene. Well, tell a lie. The truth is, yeah, obviously one of the YB sources came through in the early hours of this morning, and they've essentially told me the following. The YB source has learned that a purse bid hearing for the ordered clash between WBC lineal champion Tyson Fury and WBC interim titleist Dillian the Shillian Shite has been postponed by at least 1 week. The matter was scheduled to serve as the subject of a January 11th purse bid hearing, only to move back to now January 18th, if not later, as Shite plans to appeal the purse split assigned to the championship fight. Man, that's essentially the bottom line on this one. And for you man who have watched my latest video from Eddie Hearn, who's going through it right now, yeah, he missing. I mean, like I said in the video I put out a minute ago, Eddie Hearn made me laugh. Like, Eddie Hearn for all the years, yeah, Eddie Hearn, and it's quite obvious, Eddie Hearn starts off all interviews talking about the big things that are going on, but trust me, yeah, I kid you not, two 20-minute Eddie Hearn videos came out over the last week, yeah. All I heard him talk about is some random fighters I've never heard of, just gassing the place up. Oh, we got this dude called Sharuk Vasheni. Sharuk Vasheni? Who the fuck? Ain't no one trying to hear about Sharuk Vasheni. You know what I mean? Yeah? Mr. Vashuk need to get in there and get stuck in about Vashuk. And that goes for all the other bum fighters that are out there. People ain't trying to hear no bum fights. I'll tell you a lie, the casual fans, like the YB, ain't trying to watch no bum fights. So tell Vashuk to get in there. How about that? Get in there. Like, and that, to be fair to Vashuk, it's not just him. It goes for all of them. Conor Ben, Buatsi, just hanging around the place. Decorate, mate. You know, I don't know what they're doing. Get in there. Yeah? Ain't no one trying to hear about Vashuk or Conor Ben unless they're fighting someone. But anyway, moving on. The reason I'm giving you that background is to say that it's funny because Eddie Hearn, the big news people want to hear about is obviously Dillian Shite and Tyson Fury and maybe a bit about Johnston. But them ones, he spent, no word of a lie, he spent 90% of the interview talking about random fighters, and then he slipped in the news about Mr. Dillian the Shillian Whyte. But for years, when he was on top, it was all Dillian this and pay-per-view that and all that kind of stuff. So I just find it quite ironic. But anyway, the reason I brought it up in reference to this situation is because in that particular interview from the last few days, Eddie Hearn did say, and I broke the news exclusively, that Eddie Hearn and Dillian Whyte were pursuing the WBC with new legal action. Essentially, via an appeal, they're appealing through the courts this decision. And therefore, that's what's making the delay in the purse bid. Well, that's likely to delay the purse bid. Now, at the time, i.e. yesterday, when I broke the news that Eddie Hearn and Dillian Whyte were appealing, had decided to officially appeal, because people forget, oh, YB, it's obvious the purse bid were going to be delayed, or it's obvious they were going to appeal. No, it's not obvious. Dillian Whyte could have, and that's why people, oh, YB, you're a shill. YB, you've turned on Mr. Shillian Shite. No, Dillian could have said by now. Don't forget, people. At any point, at any time through this process, yeah, Dillian could have said, you know what, the YB's right, he's been right, let me just listen to what he's saying, let me take his free advice, and crack on, and go and make my own destiny, and stop begging like a big OnlyFans chick, yeah, you stay begging for like an OnlyFans chick, Dillian the Shillian. But rather than do that, what's he doing now? He's appealing. He could have said, let me crack on, and guess what, on January 11th, we'd be having a purse bid. And this is the thing as well. Oh, and this is what gets me. Eddie Hearn gassed all you man up. Oh, we think this fight's worth 100 million. We think this. We're going to do that. Don't worry, Dillian. I got your back. Oops. What happened to that? All that gamma, yeah, all that yammer Eddie Hearn was jabbering on about. Where's it gone? Oh, what you mean to say, you think the fight's worth so much, and don't worry, Dillian, I'm going to get you $10 million anyway. Oh, but actually, we're going to delay the purse bid. What happened to your big purse bid, Eddie? I thought you was Mr. Big Purse Bid. Oh, you want to delay it and see if you can get lucky in the court now. So, Dillian Whyte is now officially, it's all locked in now. Listen, if they've delayed it from January 11th, it ain't going to be January 18th either. Because we know the court thing isn't until March. So there ain't going to be, and I was hoping, a part of me, two parts of me was hoping. Number one, I was hoping Dillian was going to see his come to senses. And just realise that, you know what, I've been very lucky. I've made millions of dollars fighting bum fights on bum pay-per-views. Let me give a little bit something back to the fans. Yeah? All them shoddy pay-per-views you've sold, all them O2 tickets you've sold for shoddy fights, and no one trying to watch. Yeah? Oh, people always tell me, YB, go to the shows. Go to what shows? What, Dillian versus Rivas? Get serious, people. And to be honest, I do blame you lot. I blame you lot who go to them shows. Who's going to them shows? Who's going to watch Dillian versus Rivas? There should be no one at that show. There should be no one at Dillian versus Rivas. There should be no pay-per-views. Because there's no one trying to watch that. I'm not anyway. Don't get me wrong, I'll watch it if it's free, but I ain't paying for it. No way. Because it's not a quality fight. I wouldn't mind. Or at the time, I didn't mind so much because the whole narrative was, oh, but YB, you know, he wants Deontay Wilder. He wants Tyson Fury, but Tyson Fury ducked him. Well, now we know that was all a big sham. Dillian was just trying to attach his name to things. And we know this, oh, to be fair, we've been known this because when he turned down the AJ fight, he was talking about, I've been ducked. I've never been given opportunity. Well, he was given a $5 million opportunity, plus upside, plus the chance to fight for 3 belts, plus the chance to get your get back after being knocked out cold. The man who popped your cherry, yeah? Anthony Johnston popped your cherry. What happened to just trying to get back? What happened to Mr. Brixton? Yeah? What happened to the Roadman? What happened to... someone needs to tell me what happened to the Brixton Roadman. Because in my mind, the Brixton Roadman is supposed to want to get the get back regardless. The $5 million should have been a bonus. He should have been doing it for Brixton, no? Oops. Yeah? Oh, there weren't no Brixton. There weren't no Brixton in Shillian. He just talking. Yeah, he a lawyer now. Dillian is an accountant and a lawyer, bottom line. That's what we know now. Because he's been given his shot. He's been talking about I've knocked Tyson Fury out, and he's been offered $5 million again, and he's turning it down again. And he hasn't learnt his lesson. And I really do. It's not even about hope, actually. I know he's going to get punked by the courts, because he hasn't got a case. And when he gets punked by the courts, I reckon it's going to, either way, it's going to stretch all the way out. This is going to be the longest year of his life. And he's already old as well. It's weird. Honestly, I'm confused. I really am confused. And genuinely, yeah, I wouldn't mind if we were talking about some insurmountable or some small amount of money. If we were talking about, like, I don't know, 400k, where you're thinking, well, this is the difference between 300k and 5 million YB. I get that, but we're talking about 6 million and 10 million. It's not that much different, if you know what I'm saying. It's not like, wow, it's not one of them ones. And when you think about it, what about if you win, Dillian? And this is the thing, I don't think Dillian's even thought about winning. Because if he had thought a little bit about winning, if Dillian was half thinking of winning, yeah, he'd be on this. He'd think, oh, wait a minute, I'm going to win. I'm going to get 5 million. I'm going to have the belt for the first time in my career. I'm going to have an A-star win for the first time in my career. And I'm going to be the daddy. And then I'm going to have Tyson Fury by the balls. And I'm going to be able to throw 90-10 back in his face. And we know the rematch is going to be massive. Because everyone's going to be intrigued to see how he comes back. So if Dillian was thinking just a little bit about winning, he'd have took it all on already. Knowing that in 6 months he's going to make more than 10 million. But instead, it's all defensive. It's all just trying to get something, get what he can. It's quite embarrassing, to be honest with you. And the fact this for me just locked it all in now. This confirms it. I was praying, you know what, number one, I was praying Dillian would see his senses. Not praying, because I couldn't care less, the sport's dead, but I mean, I was thinking, maybe Dillian the Shillian, maybe there's a little bit of Brixton hard man left in him, but he's soft like butter now, yeah? But the other part of me thought, and I'm disappointed, you know, that I'm not sure about what the procedure is, but I'm not sure why the WBC, because it's one thing Dillian saying, well, we don't want to go to purse bids because we're appealing the 80-20 ruling from the WBC. But I'm thinking to myself, why can't the WBC say, okay, you can appeal, but we're carrying on? But I guess how could the WBC carry on if Dillian? But then again, I don't get that. We know that. Wait a minute. We know the rules. Yeah, the rules say ultimately that WBC has the bottom line final word. That is what we do know in the rules, by the way. We can talk this, but this is the thing about people. People need to realise there's a lot of stuff flying around. Interim champions 45%. Oh, the bottom line is 70-30. Oh, it's 80-20. Do you know what the real bottom line is, people? When you actually read the rules, the only thing we do know for sure is that it says, ultimately, the WBC can do what they want. And if we've learned anything from the F1 thing, yeah? In that F1 thing with Lewis Hamilton, in that F1 thing with Lewis Shilton, yeah? Lewis Shillington, yeah? In the whole F1 thing with Lewis Shillington, we learned that there's clauses in there that say it's at the final discretion of the regulators. And Lewis Hamilton, like a good, what's the man's name? Like a good Samuel L. Jackson from Django, yeah? Lewis Hamilton, like a good Samuel L. Jackson from Django, sucked it up. Yes, massa. Yeah, massa. Please, massa. 3 bags full of massa. Yeah, one of them ones. 100%. He sucked it up. So, on that basis, what does Dillian Whyte mean he's going to appeal? Appeal what? The rules are the rules. And this is the thing, I've been saying, I've mentioned in my last videos, if these guys have got so much problem with the governing bodies, which I understand to be fair, I think I've been saying for years, someone needs to come along and innovate and try and pull off a UFC. Because there's enough, I'm being funny, the amount of money, yeah, DAZN have wasted. In fact, the amount of money PBC Al Heyman and DAZN have wasted, they may as well have rolled the dice and tried to pull off a UFC. At least the upside is multi-billion. These guys are DAZN spending hundreds of millions and there's no upside. You're not making no infrastructure. If I was going to invest hundreds of millions, I'd want to know that, well, there's a possibility here we could kind of, it takes off and we end up like the UFC. These guys, DAZN are putting in tens and hundreds of millions into individual fighters and there's no legacy there. Because guess what? You've pumped tens of millions, hundreds of millions into Alvarez. When he gets to 40, what happens then? Oops, it's gone up in smoke. Whereas if you've actually made your own belt, made your own division with that, you've got something left then. All these years you've been paying people like Anthony Johnston, people like Alvarez to build your belt up. When they retire, you've still got all that clout in the belt. It would be people like AJ, Dillian Whyte, Tyson Fury, or whoever you can get. They would be the people who make your belt valuable. Imagine if you'd have had Fury versus AJ or whoever for the DAZN belt. Anyway, that's not the point. Is Dillian moaning about the rules? He hasn't tried. They're not trying to do anything else. But with that said, that's what you signed up for. You signed the WBC rules, and in the WBC rules, it says it's their final. It's at their discretion. And even the clause that allegedly says 45% for interim, which we know now has been changed since. In the last few years it's been changed. Even in that clause, there's still a clause after that which says, yeah, interim's 45%, or if we deem one of the fighters has more market value, then we'll change it. And that's what they've decided, people. That's where the 80-20 ruling came from. It came from, they already published their thoughts on that. They believe Tyson Fury is much bigger, based on the post. Remember, you got to remember as well, the WBC, they know what these guys are making. The numbers run through there because the WBC gets a split. So when the WBC's taking their 1%, they know, wait a minute, we only collected 10 grand from Dillian, but we collected 100 grand from Tyson Fury. Wait there a minute, that proves Tyson Fury earning 10 times as much. And you've also got to bear in mind on that basis that people say, YB, it's unfair. WBC are shilling for Fury. Well, not really. Think about it from their organisation point of view. They've got one man who's put 100 grand in their pocket in the last fight, and they got another man who's put 10 grand in their pocket in the last fight. So why are they going to show allegiance to Dillian Whyte for, Mr. 10 grand? So it actually makes even more sense that they're doing this. They're doing this because they're almost saying thank you to Tyson Fury. Thank you, Tyson Fury, for bringing in the money for us. Dillian, Mr. 10 grand. And that's how business works, people. You get what you bring in. When you're the cash cow, which in this situation Tyson Fury relatively is, that's how it goes. And Dillian should have known this. He should have known if he's only doing 300, 400k, he's not going to have a case. And that's why I'm so shocked. And really, I'm going to leak this in a few days, but if you actually look at Dillian Whyte's case, he's not claiming that, oh, the WBC owes me because, or the WBC 80-20 is wrong because I'm such a valuable guy. Dillian Whyte's actually claiming that he's been done wrong in the past. That's what he's clinging on to. Even though a whole bunch of things have happened since then, i.e. getting knocked out, i.e. Tyson Fury's now the new champion, i.e. it's been years since you've been done wrong, i.e. you've already been granted your mandatory now. The mandatory was 3 months ago you was granted it. But for me, the bottom line is, you signed up to the WBC. If you didn't like it, you shouldn't have signed up with them. And upon their rules, what are you waiting for? What does he think? Genuinely, yeah, if Dillian had a massively strong case, and that's something I want to hear from you shillian Whyte fans. Tell me what point, tell me where, what kind of legal argument have you got in your heads which says, YB, this man's going to smash it in court? Tell me what you're thinking, because I honestly can't see it. All we start hearing is, oh, but YB, it's the injustice. Injustice of what? What's been unjust? He's got his shot now. That's water under the bridge in my mind. Guess what? If he had a problem for things that was happening 2 years ago, he should have said it then. Oops. And guess who was saying that? Me. You can't have a problem 2 years ago in a sport that's always changing and then bring it up later on. It's just messy. That's messy to me. Super duper messy. Especially when we know the whole scene has changed. You got knocked out, for example. Oh, I've been done wrong, but then I got knocked out, which reset the clock. That made no sense. It would be one thing, yeah. It would be one thing, yeah, if Dillian had posted a case before he got knocked out. If Dillian had a running case, if Dillian had went to court before he got knocked out and the case was active, and he put forward all of his problems, that'd be different. And then he gets knocked out. But that'd be completely different because you put it in there. It's gone forward. It's in process. But afterwards, you ain't got no argument as far as the sport goes. We know rankings change and positions change. For Dillian's argument to hold you, it would have to be the case that a knockout doesn't change anything, or that you can be mandatory forever, no matter what happens. So are you telling me if Dillian Whyte gets knocked out 5 times in a row, his legal case would still be valid? If you don't believe it, then his legal case isn't valid after being knocked out once. Do you understand what I'm saying? For Dillian's case to be valid now, you'd have to also agree that Dillian being knocked out 5 times, because he's already been knocked out once. So what's the difference? The clock's either been reset or it hasn't. Oh, but why? I had some people tell me, why be? But he undone it. He beat Povetkin. It doesn't matter. It's reset. It's a new claim. Dillian Whyte's clock here of injustice reset the minute he beat Povetkin. And unfortunately, people, if you actually look at the WBC's actions, the WBC has more or less played this by the book. Dillian beat Povetkin, when was it, March? And then within 6 months, September, they'd already ordered the mandatory. And they're playing it by the book now. And that's why I'm so strong on the fact that Dillian needs to chalk this up to the game. He made mistakes. He waited and sat around for 3 years when he had his case. All them opportunities. When Tyson Fury jumped the queue. When Dominic Brazil jumped the queue. When Ortiz jumped the queue. All them opportunities were screaming out for something to happen. Instead, he sat there It was weird, man. I don't know what he was thinking. Fighting Malcolm Tan. And fighting random fights. I couldn't understand it. But yeah, bottom line, people, I'm not going to rabbit on for much longer. We've gone round in circles, but it's just frustrating for me. It's sad that this is what we get these days. I don't remember, genuinely, yeah, I know media's changed recently, in the recent years, but back in the 90s, and I'm not glorifying it, I know there were problems, but it seems every single fight, innit? It's like, you got Fury versus Wilder, has to go to court for a year, and you forget that things are all, like, the world is all, or the top level of heavyweight, or the top level of boxing, yeah, it's all interlinked. There isn't 50 top heavyweight fighters, which means that year that Fury that year that Fury was running around from Wilder, God knows why, given the result, what was he doing? What was he thinking? Why was he running from Wilder for? Makes no sense, but he was running. It's the bottom line. I had Fury fans trying to convince me, YB is not running. He just, what? Just fight the guy, knock the guy out then. You signed the contract. Guess what? If you didn't want the rematch with Wilder, you shouldn't have signed the rematch clause in there. But you did, so get on with it. I don't know what Tyson Fury was thinking, especially now, and that's part of the reason I bet with Wilder, because I thought, well, why would you take a man to court not to fight if he wasn't scared? He goes in there and dominates. But it's baffling. But what I was saying was, that whole year, that extra year we got wasted, where Fury was playing around, pulling out, whatever else, that year held everything else up. We could have had. Well, we probably couldn't because Dillian would be still playing around. But you know what I'm saying? It moves everything back a year. That year's taken out. We could have had the Wilder fight a year earlier. Genuinely, yeah? No word of a lie. If you remember correctly, Wilder versus Fury was legitimately supposed to be on September in Q4 of 2020, which is literally a year before. There was talks of it being in July 2020. So it's like, we're a year behind. And now, by the sounds of this Dillian Whyte thing, bear in mind, what else do we know? Wilder and Fury fought in October. This Dillian Whyte thing ain't going to be until March. And that case, by the way, that case in March, yeah, that legal case in March, for all we know, number one, if Dillian Whyte wins, Tyson Fury is going to appeal, which will be another 6 months. Because don't forget, people, Dillian Whyte, this case from Dillian Whyte was posted in September. So I don't know what's going on with the courts, but it seems to be there's some sort of 6-month thing. You put a legal case in, it takes 6 months. Weird. Either way, that's the case. So, if Dillian Whyte does win something, which he won't, but still, that's going to be a Tyson Fury appeal. There's another 6 months. There's a year, at best. And even if Dillian doesn't win, that case still won't be resolved until March. And that doesn't mean that, YB, if the case is resolved in March, and 80-20 is final, that doesn't mean they're in the ring on March the day after, does it? That means if they can finally go to purse bids. And that's why this thing here about, we're delaying the purse bid now and all this kind of stuff, that's what's upset me at the fact that if they're not moving forward with this, that means they're going to wait for March. And that means they'll just about be starting to negotiate and do purse bids in March. Which means, let's say the purse bids gets called in March, that's 2 weeks. And then you're in April. And then probably another 2 weeks. And then you've got a 3-week camp. Everyone's going to want a 2 to 3 month camp. So you're looking at July. Dillian fought for a year already, but so we lose another year. Another year, top fights are all queued up. We should be going through them. Like, do you guys remember the time when heavyweight fighters, I mean, no word of a lie, I remember when Floyd Mayweather was in the sport, and genuinely, Floyd Mayweather, to his credit, would fight twice a year. He'd fight in May and he'd fight in September. Every year. But at the time, I remember being critical of Floyd, saying, wow, man, yeah, he's pretty consistent, but twice a year? That's not a lot, is it? Once every 6 months. These days, and to be honest, it's not even the top fighters. This is the standard. These days, you're lucky to see these guys fight once a year. Look at AJ. Even AJ, who's someone who's quite consistent, relatively. AJ fought in December 2020. In fact, yeah, he fought, wait there, he fought, no wait, yeah, AJ has fought AJ's fought December 2019. Yeah, he's fought December 2019, then December 2020, then September 2021. So a year. For the last 2-3 years, AJ's been fighting once a year. He fought December 2020. He fought December 2019, December 2020, and now September 2021. Once a year, basically. Wow. And he's the most consistent. Fury's fighting once every 18 months. It just kills the sport, man. Really does. And that's why I'm praying someone else works out and I can get away from this dead game. It's dead. 6 months should, honestly, yeah. 6 months should be a bare bones minimum. Like, you should be sweating if you can't get fulfilled within 6 months. Especially when you've think about it. What other sport do you know, yeah? Where you rock up and compete twice a year for 30, yeah? What other sport do you know who does that? Tennis, they're doing 10 Grand Slams a year. Racing, driving, 30 big races a year. Every other sport, you're competing consistently. Every other sport is at least twice a year big competitions. I can't think of one sport that you ain't doing that. Boxing, you're lucky to get once a year. And even then, the way it is now, it's not even like you can say, well, IB, yeah, they're only fighting once a year, but at least we get the bangers every time. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't even mind if we got the bangers, but the way things work out now, you can have Fury versus some bum, or Dillian the Shillian versus some bum. To be fair to Fury, this won't be because of him. This will be because of Dillian the Shillian shite. This time. Now that's one thing I do, even though AJ always loses, but at least AJ, the fights we do get at top level, or the best that's around at the time. So what's going through these people's heads? But again, unfortunately, I mean, people talk about, fighters need to get... And to be fair, obviously the lower fighters are broke. That's a fact. Lower fighters are broke, relatively speaking. But top fighters, it's almost like a paradox. And that's why I do really respect and rate Alvarez even more. Because he could be like these other guys, just rocking up once a year and scared to fight and taking people to court and moaning. And he gets in there, he does his thing. Yeah? He gets in there and he does his thing. Twice a year. He's out there. No excuse. No C19. And he, most of the time, or 9 times out of 10, he's fighting the best as well. Back to back to back to back. And that's what I say when I mean, not only from an entertainment point of view is it bad, but also from the fighters themselves. You can't, I'm afraid to say, but you can't be a peak performer rocking up once a year, rocking up once every 18 months. Really, twice a year is the bare bones minimum. I don't even think that's no good. I think that really people should be fighting 4 times a year. I think people should be having 2 big fights a year and then 2 throwaways just to keep sharp and work on things. People don't realise that in the gym, it's not the same. Even if you're fighting a mid-tier dude, it's still different. It's a complete different ball game. Actually in the lights. And that's what, if I was training a fighter, we'd fight 3-4 times a year. 2 big, well, 1 or 2 massive fights, and then 1 or 2 training fights to work on things and try things out, and keep the public's imagination going. I think it's always good as well. Don't forget, look at the earlier years. There's nothing wrong here with knocking a bum out in between. The problem is when all you want to do is fight bums. But I'm saying, if you're fighting in a 3-year period, if you're fighting 6 good fights, or if you're fighting 4 or 5 good fights, no one's going to complain if you putting a few bums in there and KOing them cold and looking emphatic. If anything, it keeps that momentum going. Look at Mike Tyson. You know what I mean? He slip a few bums in there to knock out. Keeps the hype going. And the bad thing is, though, the way these men are today, they can't even knock bums out, can they? That's the truth. They can't, can they, though? Let's be honest. They can't knock bums out. That's probably the reason. Look at Dillian Whyte. He ain't knocking no bums out. Is he? Let's be real now. Dillian the shillian ain't knocking no bums out. Yeah? He ain't. They're going life and death with them. Going life, same as, well, yeah, even Fury as well. Going life and death with Wallin. So that's probably why they ain't doing that, because they're thinking, wow, if I go in there with a bum, it's going to be a life and death performance with a bum. But anyway, listen, I've rambled on, but it's all relevant stuff, man. Bottom line, the purse bid's not happening. Dillian's officially locked in. He's cacked his pants, and he don't want no smoke. You've Mr. Financial now. He's Mr. Financial Accountant Lawyer. Yeah?